The scream tore through the penthouse like shattered glass. Marcus Whitmore's hands were shaking. No, trembling. As he held his daughter's face between his palms, staring into eyes that had been gray and clouded since birth, but were now wide, wet, and seeing. Seeing him. Seeing everything. The late afternoon sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Manhattan apartment, painting gold across Amara's brown skin, and for the first time in her 8 years of life, she blinked against the light. She gasped. She cried. And Marcus, billionaire, Forbes cover CEO, the man who'd built Whitmore Tech from a basement startup into a global empire, fell to his knees and wept like a child. Behind them, the nanny stood frozen, clutching an old wooden box to her chest. Her name was Evelyn, a 60-something Haitian woman with silver locks and a face carved by decades of quiet suffering. The box was small, no bigger than a jewelry case, its surface scarred and stained, the brass clasp tarnished with age. It had been hidden in the attic for nearly a decade. Forgotten, feared, forbidden. Marcus had locked it away himself the day his wife died, and now his daughter could see. "Papa," Amara whispered, her voice cracking with wonder and terror. "Papa, your face. It's beautiful." Marcus couldn't speak. He pulled her into his arms and buried his face in her hair, his shoulders heaving. Evelyn set the box down gently on the marble floor, her own eyes brimming, and backed away as if the air itself had become sacred. "But here's the thing. Stay with me until the end, because this miracle, it's only the beginning of what that box unleashed. What came next didn't just change Amara's life. It unraveled everything Marcus thought he knew about love, power, and the secrets we bury to survive. And if you think this is where the story peaks, trust me. You need to see what happens when the past refuses to stay buried." Marcus Whitmore wasn't supposed to be a father. He'd never imagined himself holding a baby, changing diapers, singing lullabies in the dark. His own father had been a ghost, a shadow who disappeared when Marcus was 6, leaving behind nothing but unpaid bills and a mother who worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. Marcus grew up angry, hungry, brilliant. He taught himself to code in public libraries, hacked his way into scholarships, graduated MIT at 20, and launched Whitmore Tech at 22. By 30, he was a billionaire. By 35, he was untouchable. And then he met Celeste. She wasn't like the women who circled him at galas and investor meetings, dripping in diamonds and ambition. Celeste was a painter, a black woman from New Orleans with paint-stained hands and a laugh that sounded like gospel music. She didn't care about his money. She cared about the way he looked at art, the way he got quiet when he was thinking, the way he still ate ramen sometimes just because it reminded him of who he used to be. They married in a small ceremony in the French Quarter, surrounded by her family and a handful of his closest friends. No press, no spectacle, just love. Amara was born 2 years later, on a rainy October night. Marcus had been in the delivery room, holding Celeste's hand, whispering promises he meant with his whole soul. But when the doctor placed Amara in his arms, something was wrong. Her eyes didn't focus. They didn't track movement. They were clouded, distant, like she was looking through fog. The diagnosis came a week later. Congenital blindness, cause unknown, irreversible. Marcus threw money at it. He flew in specialists from London, Tokyo, Berlin. He funded research, donated millions to hospitals, built an entire wing at Columbia Presbyterian in Amara's name. But nothing worked. The doctors all said the same thing. There's nothing we can do. Celeste took it harder than he did. She stopped painting. She stopped laughing. She spent hours sitting in Amara's nursery, rocking her, singing old Creole songs her grandmother had taught her. Marcus would find her there at 3 a.m, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." He didn't understand why she apologized. It wasn't her fault. It was just life. Cruel, random, indifferent. But then, 6 months after Amara's first birthday, Celeste started talking about the box. Marcus had seen it before, an old wooden thing Celeste kept in the back of her closet. She never opened it, never talked about it. But one night, she pulled it out and set it on their bed, her hands shaking. "This was my grandmother's," she said quietly. "She was a priestess, voodoo. The real kind, not the Hollywood bullshit." Marcus didn't believe in any of that. He believed in code, in logic, in things you could measure and replicate. But he loved Celeste, so he listened. "She told me never to open it unless I was desperate," Celeste continued. "She said there's power in here. Old power. Dangerous. Celeste, I'm desperate, Marcus." He looked at her, really looked, and saw the hollowness in her eyes, the way grief had carved her out from the inside, and he realized she was serious. "What's in it?" he asked. "I don't know. She never told me. But she said it could heal, or it could destroy." Marcus wanted to laugh. He wanted to call it superstition, folklore, desperation dressed up as faith. But Celeste was looking at him like she was drowning, and the box was the only lifeboat. So he said, "Okay." They opened it together that night, sitting cross-legged on the floor of their bedroom. Inside was a collection of strange objects. A small glass vial filled with something dark and viscous. A bundle of dried herbs tied with red string. A piece of cloth embroidered with symbols Marcus didn't recognize. And a folded piece of paper covered in handwritten Creole. Celeste read the note aloud, her voice trembling. It was a ritual. Instructions. A plea to the Loe, the spirits her grandmother had served. There were warnings, too. The price is always paid. What is taken must be given. Balance must be kept. "This is insane," Marcus said. "I know," Celeste whispered. "But what if it works?" They didn't do the ritual that night. Celeste wanted to think about it, to pray, to be sure. But a week later, she was dead. It was an accident. A car ran a red light on the Upper West Side, T-boned her sedan, killed her instantly. Marcus got the call while he was in a board meeting. He didn't remember leaving the room. He didn't remember the drive to the hospital. He only remembered standing in the morgue, staring at Celeste's face, so still, so wrong, and feeling something inside him crack like a frozen lake. After the funeral, he went home, found the box, and locked it in the attic. He didn't want to see it. Didn't want to think about it. It felt cursed, tainted, like it had taken Celeste from him the moment she'd considered using it. But now Amara could see. And the box was open again. Marcus stood slowly, his legs unsteady, and walked over to where Evelyn had set it down. He stared at it, his heart pounding. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "what did you do?" The old woman met his gaze, her expression calm, unshaken. "What you were too afraid to," she said. Evelyn Baptiste had worked for the Whitmore family for 7 years. She'd started a year after Celeste died, hired through an agency that specialized in placing caregivers for children with disabilities. Marcus had interviewed a dozen candidates, but Evelyn was different. She didn't pity Amara. She didn't speak to her in that sing-song voice people used around blind children, like they were fragile or simple. She spoke to her like a person. She listened when Amara talked about the shapes she could feel in her mind, the colors she dreamed about, the music she heard in the rain. "She sees more than you think," Evelyn had said during her interview. "Just not with her eyes." Marcus had hired her on the spot. Over the years, Evelyn became more than a nanny. She became family. She cooked Haitian food on Sundays, griot and diri ak John, and told Amara stories about the Loa, about Erzuli and Legba and Baron Samedi. Marcus didn't love it, the same superstitions Celeste had believed in. But Amara adored her, and that was enough. But Evelyn had a secret. She'd known Celeste's grandmother. Not well, but enough. They'd both been part of the same community in Port-au-Prince before emigrating to the States, both priestesses in the old tradition. When Evelyn saw Celeste's obituary in the paper 7 years ago, she recognized the family name. And when she came to work for Marcus, she knew exactly what that box in the attic was. She'd felt it the first time she stepped into the penthouse. A heaviness. A presence. The kind of power that doesn't fade, even when locked away. For years she'd left it alone. It wasn't her place. But then, a month ago, Amara had come to her crying. "I had a dream about Mama," the little girl had said, her clouded eyes wet with tears. "She said I could see. She said there's a way. But Papa won't let me." Evelyn's heart had clenched. She'd held Amara close, stroking her hair, and made a decision. She waited until Marcus was out of town, a 3-day tech conference in Silicon Valley. Then she went into the attic, found the box, and brought it down to Amara's room. "Your mama loved you more than anything," Evelyn had said, setting the box on the bed. "And she left you a gift." Amara's small hands had traced the surface of the box, her fingers reading the grooves and scars like Braille. "What is it?" she'd whispered. "A miracle," Evelyn said. "If you're brave enough." The ritual wasn't complicated. Light a candle, burn the herbs, anoint Amara's eyes with the oil from the vial. Speak the words written in Creole, a prayer, a plea, a promise. Evelyn had done it carefully, reverently, the way she'd been taught. And when she finished, Amara had gasped, her hands flying to her face, her body going rigid. "It's okay, baby," Evelyn had whispered. "It's okay. Just breathe." And then, slowly, Amara had opened her eyes. They weren't gray anymore. They were brown, deep, rich, alive. And they were looking at Evelyn with an expression of wonder so profound it broke the old woman's heart. "I can see you," Amara had whispered. "I can see you, Evelyn." That's when Marcus had come home early. Now, standing in the living room, the box between them, Marcus looked at Evelyn like she was a stranger. "You had no right," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're right," Evelyn said calmly. "I didn't. But I did it anyway. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Marcus's voice cracked. "That box. Celeste." "Celeste wanted this," Evelyn interrupted. "She wanted Amara to see. She just didn't have the courage to finish it." Marcus flinched like she'd slapped him. "And you do?" he spat. "You think you know better than me? Than the doctors? Than a dead woman who loved her daughter more than her own life?" Evelyn's voice was sharp now, cutting. "Yes, Marcus, I do." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amara, still sitting on the floor, looked between them with her new eyes, confusion and fear flickering across her face. "Papa?" she said quietly. "Are you mad at Evelyn?" Marcus's jaw tightened. He crouched down, taking Amara's hands. "No, baby," he lied. "I'm not mad. I'm just surprised." Amara smiled, a small tentative thing, and it broke something in him all over again. But as Marcus looked back at the box, a cold dread settled in his chest. He thought about the note. The price is always paid. What is taken must be given. "Evelyn," he said quietly. "What's the price?" The old woman's face darkened. "I don't know," she admitted. "But it's coming." Take a second and ask yourself, if you had the power to give your child a miracle, would you take the risk? Drop a comment below and let me know, because what happens next is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about love and sacrifice. The first sign came 3 days later. Amara woke up screaming. Marcus bolted out of bed, his heart hammering, and ran to her room. She was sitting up in bed, her new eyes wide and wild, her small body trembling. "Papa," she gasped. "Papa, she's here." "Who's here?" Marcus asked, pulling her into his arms. "Mama." The room went cold. Marcus looked around, his skin prickling. The room was empty. Just Amara's bed, her toys, the soft glow of her nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. "Amara, baby, Mama's not—" "She's here," Amara insisted, pointing toward the corner of the room. "She's standing right there." Marcus followed her gaze. There was nothing. Just shadows. But Amara wasn't looking at nothing. She was staring, her new eyes fixed on a point in the dark, and her expression was one of pure, unfiltered terror. "She's angry," Amara whispered. "She's so angry, Papa." Marcus's blood turned to ice. He didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in spirits or curses or any of the things Celeste had talked about. But watching his daughter stare at something he couldn't see, hearing the fear in her voice. "Amara," he said gently. "There's nothing there. You're just—" "She says you shouldn't have let Evelyn open the box," Amara interrupted, her voice eerily calm now. "She says the price is too high. She says—" "Amara, stop." But she didn't. She kept talking, her voice taking on a strange, distant quality, like she was reciting something from memory. "She says the Loa don't give without taking. She says they're coming. She says—" "Amara!" Marcus grabbed her shoulders, his voice sharper than he intended. Amara blinked, her eyes refocusing, and she started to cry. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry, Papa. I didn't mean to scare you." Marcus pulled her close, his own hands shaking. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's okay, baby. You just had a bad dream." But he didn't believe that, and neither did she. The next morning, Marcus called Evelyn into his office. "She saw something," he said without preamble. "Last night, she said Celeste was in her room." Evelyn didn't look surprised. "The veil is thin now," she said simply. "The ritual opened it. Amara can see more than just the physical world. I don't want her seeing ghosts, Evelyn. I want her to see the world like a normal kid. There's no going back, Marcus. What's done is done." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk, making Evelyn flinch. "Then undo it." "I can't." "Find a way." Evelyn stood, her expression hard. "You think I haven't tried? You think I don't know what I've done? That box doesn't just give, it binds." "Amara's sight isn't a gift, Marcus. It's a contract, and someone's going to pay." Marcus felt the room tilt. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn didn't answer. She just walked out, leaving him alone with the weight of what was coming. That night, Amara saw her mother again. This time, Marcus saw her too. He was sitting in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey, when the temperature dropped. His breath misted in the air. The lights flickered. And then she was there. Celeste. She stood in the doorway, exactly as he remembered her. Dark skin, paint-stained hands, that sad, soft smile. But her eyes were wrong. They were hollow, endless, filled with something ancient and hungry. "Marcus," she said, and her voice was like wind through dead leaves. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "You shouldn't have let her open it," Celeste said. "I told you, I warned you." "I didn't," Marcus choked out. "I didn't open it." "Evelyn, it doesn't matter." Celeste stepped closer, and the air grew colder. "They're coming for what's owed, and they always collect." "Who?" Marcus whispered. "Who's coming?" Celeste smiled, and it was the saddest thing he'd ever seen. "The ones I made the deal with," she said. "The ones who took me instead." And then she was gone. Marcus sat there in the dark, his heart pounding, his mind racing. The price wasn't coming. It had already been paid. Celeste had died because of the box. And now, because Evelyn had opened it again, something else was going to be taken. Marcus stood, his decision made. He was going to find a way to break this curse, even if it killed him. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop screen casting harsh shadows across his face and did what he always did when he needed answers. He researched. He read everything he could find about Vodou, about the Loa, about rituals and contracts and the price of power. Most of it was garbage, sensationalized, Hollywood nonsense. But buried in obscure forums and academic papers, he found threads that felt real. Warnings, stories, accounts from people who'd seen things they couldn't explain. One name kept appearing: Mama Laveau. Not the famous Marie Laveau from New Orleans folklore, but her descendant, a woman who still practiced in the Ninth Ward, who still honored the old gods, who still knew the language of spirits. By dawn, Marcus had booked a flight. He told Evelyn he'd be gone for 2 days. She didn't ask where he was going. She just nodded and promised to keep Amara safe. From what? Marcus had asked. From what's coming, Evelyn said. New Orleans in October was humid and heavy, the air thick with the smell of rain and fried food and something older, darker, that clung to the streets like a memory. Marcus took an Uber from the airport to the Ninth Ward, to a small house painted Caribbean blue with wind chimes hanging from the porch. The driver had looked at him funny when he gave the address. "You sure you want to go there, man?" the driver had asked. "I'm sure," Marcus said. The driver shrugged and drove in silence. Now, standing on the porch, Marcus knocked. The door opened almost immediately, like she'd been expecting him. Mama Laveau was older than Marcus had imagined. Maybe 70, maybe older, with silver hair wrapped in a crimson scarf and eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him. She wore a simple white dress, and around her neck hung a necklace made of bones and cowrie shells. "Marcus Whitmore," she said, her voice low and musical. "I wondered when you'd come." He blinked. "You know who I am?" "Child, I knew your wife. Knew her grandmother, too. You think the spirits don't talk?" She stepped aside, gesturing him in. "Come. We have much to discuss." Inside, the house smelled like incense and tobacco, and something sweet Marcus couldn't place. The walls were covered in paintings, vivid, chaotic things that reminded him of Celeste's work. Candles burned everywhere, casting flickering shadows. In the center of the room was a small altar covered in offerings: rum, cigars, coins, flowers. Mama Laveau sat in a worn armchair and gestured for Marcus to sit across from her. "You opened the box," she said. It wasn't a question. "Not me," Marcus said. "The nanny. But yes. And now the child can see." "Yes." Mama Laveau nodded slowly, like this confirmed something she already knew. "And the price?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Celeste. She died because of it, didn't she?" "Not because of it. For it." Mama Laveau leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Your wife made a bargain with the Eloa. She offered herself in exchange for your daughter's sight. But she was too afraid to finish the ritual, so the debt remained, unpaid, waiting. But Evelyn finished it. Yes. And now the Loa will take what they're owed." Marcus's chest tightened. "What do they want?" Mama Laveau was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant, like she was listening to something Marcus couldn't hear. "A life," she said finally. "That's always the price. A life for a life. Your wife tried to give hers, but the ritual wasn't complete, so the debt transferred. It's attached to the box now, and to anyone who opens it." Marcus felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "So Evelyn is marked," Mama Laveau finished. "Unless you find another way." "What other way?" Marcus demanded. "Tell me. I'll do anything." Mama Laveau studied him, her expression unreadable. "There's always a loophole," she said slowly. "But it requires sacrifice, true sacrifice. Not just death, something deeper." "I don't understand." "The Loa respect balance, life for life, power for price. But they also respect intent. If you can prove your love, your willingness to lose everything for the child, they might release the debt." "How?" Mama Laveau stood, walking to the altar. She picked up a small clay jar and handed it to Marcus. Inside is a wanga, a charm. You bury it at the threshold of your home. Then you perform a ritual of severance. You sever the connection between the box and your family. But to do that, you must give something up. Something precious. Like what? That's for you to decide, Mama Laveau said. But know this. The Loa will test you. They will make you choose. And whatever you choose, you must mean it. They can smell hesitation. They can taste doubt. Marcus took the jar, his hands shaking. And if I do this, Amara keeps her sight? If you do it right, yes. And Evelyn? Is spared. Marcus nodded slowly, his mind racing. Thank you, he said. Mama Laveau smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't thank me yet, child. The hard part hasn't even started. Marcus flew back to New York that night, the clay jar clutched in his carry-on like a lifeline. He didn't know what he was going to give up. He didn't know how he was going to prove his love. But he knew one thing. He wasn't losing anyone else. Not Amara. Not Evelyn. Not even if it meant losing himself. Marcus got home just after midnight. The penthouse was dark except for the soft glow of the hallway nightlight. Evelyn met him at the door, her face drawn and pale. She's been asking for you, Evelyn said quietly. She won't sleep. Marcus nodded, setting down his bag, and walked to Amara's room. She was sitting up in bed, her new eyes wide and watchful. When she saw him, she burst into tears. Papa, she sobbed, reaching for him. Papa, I'm so scared. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I know, baby. I know. But it's going to be okay. I promise. She keeps coming back, Amara whispered into his chest. Mama. She keeps telling me things. Marcus's heart clenched. What does she say? Amara pulled back, looking up at him with those new, impossible eyes. She says you can't save me. She says the shadows are hungry. She says... Her voice broke. She says I should close my eyes again. Marcus felt a surge of anger. At Celeste. At the Loa. At the universe for being so goddamn cruel. No, he said firmly. Don't listen to her. You're keeping your eyes, Amara. I don't care what it costs. Amara sniffled, wiping her face. But what if Mama's right? What if the price is too high? Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his voice steady and sure. Then I'll pay it, he said. Whatever it is, I'll pay it. Amara stared at him for a long moment, then nodded, her small body relaxing slightly. She lay back down, and Marcus stayed with her, holding her hand until she finally drifted off. But he didn't sleep. He sat there in the dark, watching the shadows on the walls, and thought about what Mama Laveau had said. True sacrifice. Something precious. What did he have that was precious enough to trade for Amara's life? His company? His wealth? His reputation? None of it mattered. None of it compared to her. But the Loa wouldn't accept something easy. They'd want something that hurt, something that broke him. And then, like a whisper in the dark, he knew. The next night, Marcus performed the ritual. He waited until Amara was asleep, until Evelyn had gone to bed. Then he took the clay jar Mama Laveau had given him and went to the front door of the penthouse. He knelt, digging his fingers into the plush carpet at the threshold, and buried the jar just beneath the surface. The wanga inside felt warm, alive, like it was pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Then he went to the living room, where the box still sat on the coffee table. He picked it up, feeling the weight of it. Not just physical, but something deeper, heavier. He carried it to the center of the room and set it down. He'd written out the ritual from memory, copying the words Mama Laveau had given him. They were in Creole, a language he didn't speak but could phonetically reproduce. He lit a candle, burned the herbs from the box, and began to chant. The air grew cold. The candle flame flickered, then flared, casting wild shadows across the walls. Marcus kept chanting, his voice steady, even as his hands shook. And then the shadows moved. They peeled away from the walls, from the floor, coalescing into shapes. Vaguely human, but wrong, distorted, like reflections in broken glass. There were 3 of them, and they circled him slowly, watching, waiting. Marcus's breath came in short, sharp gasps, but he didn't stop. He finished the chant, then spoke the words Mama Laveau had given him. "I offer severance," he said, his voice loud in the silent room. "I release my family from the debt. I claim the contract as mine alone." The shadows stopped moving. One of them stepped forward, taller than the others, its form more solid, more real. It had no face, but Marcus could feel its gaze on him, heavy and ancient. "You would take the debt?" it asked, and its voice was like wind through a graveyard. "Yes," Marcus said. "What will you give?" Marcus hesitated. This was the moment, the choice. He thought about Amara, about her laugh, about the way she looked at him with her new eyes, full of wonder and hope. He thought about Celeste, about the life they'd built, the love they'd shared, and he knew what he had to give. "My memory," he said. The shadow tilted its head, curious. "Your memory?" "Of her," Marcus clarified, his voice breaking. "Of Celeste. Every moment, every kiss, every word. I give it all. You take her from me completely, and in return, you leave Amara and Evelyn alone." The silence that followed was absolute. Then the shadow laughed, a low, terrible sound that made Marcus's skin crawl. "You would forget your wife to save your child?" "Yes," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face now. "She'd want me to. She died for Amara. I can at least give this." The shadow considered him for a long moment. Then it nodded. "The debt is accepted." The shadows surged forward, wrapping around Marcus like chains. He gasped, his body going rigid, and then pain. Not physical. Worse. It was like someone was reaching into his mind, into his soul, and tearing pieces away. He saw Celeste's face, her smile, her eyes, the way she looked on their wedding day, and then it was gone. He saw their first kiss, their first fight, the way she'd cried when Amara was born. Gone. Every memory, every moment, ripped away like pages from a book. Marcus screamed, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The shadows released him, and he collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. The candle had gone out. The box was empty, crumbling to ash before his eyes. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Marcus?" she said, her voice trembling. He looked up at her, his face wet with tears, and felt nothing. He remembered that he'd been married. He remembered that his wife had died. But her face? Her voice? The feel of her? Gone. "It's done," he whispered. Evelyn's face crumpled, and she sank to her knees beside him. "Oh, Marcus," she said softly. "What have you done? If you're still here, you already know this isn't just a story. It's a mirror. Think about the people you love. What would you sacrifice for them? Drop a comment and tell me, because we're not done yet. What comes next will make you question whether some prices are too high, even for miracles." Marcus woke on the couch, his body stiff and aching. Sunlight streamed through the windows, harsh and unforgiving. He sat up slowly, his head pounding, and tried to piece together what had happened. He remembered the ritual. He remembered the shadows. He remembered making a choice. But the details were blurry, slipping through his fingers like water. Evelyn was in the kitchen, making coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. When she saw him, she set down the mug and walked over, her expression unreadable. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. Marcus frowned. Like I got hit by a truck. What happened last night? Evelyn's face tightened, and for a moment, she looked like she might cry. You don't remember? I remember the ritual, the shadows. But everything else is... He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Did it work? Evelyn nodded slowly. It worked. The debt is paid. Amara is safe. Relief flooded through Marcus, so intense it made him dizzy. And you? He asked. You're okay? I'm fine, Evelyn said, though her voice cracked. Marcus stood, stretching, and walked to the window. The city spread out below him, indifferent and eternal. He should feel something. Grief, loss, something. But all he felt was exhaustion. Where's Amara? He asked. Still asleep, Evelyn said. She didn't wake up during the ritual. I think the Loa made sure of that. Marcus nodded. Good. He didn't want her to see any of it. He turned back to Evelyn, studying her. You're not telling me something, he said. Evelyn hesitated, then sighed. You gave up your memory of Celeste, she said quietly. All of it. You don't remember her anymore. Not her face. Not her voice. Not anything. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He tried to summon an image of his wife, but there was nothing. Just a vague sense of loss, like a word on the tip of his tongue that he couldn't quite grasp. I know I loved her, he said slowly. I know she was important. But it's like looking at a photograph with the face blurred out. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She was everything, Marcus. She was the reason you smiled. The reason you learned to let your guard down. She made you human. Marcus looked away, the weight of what he'd lost settling over him like a shroud. But Amara's alive, he said. And she can see. That's what matters. Is it? Evelyn asked, her voice sharp now. Is it worth losing the woman you loved? The mother of your child? Marcus met her gaze, his jaw set. Yes, he said. Because that's what Celeste would have wanted. Even if I can't remember her face, I know that much. Evelyn wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. You're right, she whispered. She would have wanted this. They stood in silence for a moment, the morning light painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. Then Amara's voice called out from her room, bright and alive. Papa? Papa, are you home? Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Not pain, but something raw, more primal. Love. Pure, uncomplicated, real. He walked to her room and found her sitting up in bed. Her eyes, those miraculous, impossible eyes, sparkling with morning light. I'm here, baby, he said, sitting beside her. She threw her arms around him, squeezing tight. I had a dream, she said. Mama came to me. She said to tell you thank you. She said she's proud of you. Marcus's throat tightened. He didn't remember Celeste, but hearing Amara speak about her, hearing that she was proud, felt like absolution. Did she say anything else? He asked. Amara pulled back, looking up at him with those new, knowing eyes. She said the shadows are gone. She said we're free now. And she said... Amara's voice dropped to a whisper, as if sharing a secret. She said she'll always be watching, even if you can't see her. Marcus pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair, and let himself cry. Not for what he'd lost, but for what he'd saved. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood in his study, staring at the empty space where the box had been. It was gone, turned to ash, scattered, erased. The ritual had worked. The debt was paid. But the cost... He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a photo album. Evelyn had shown it to him that morning, told him it was filled with pictures of Celeste. He'd flipped through it slowly, studying each image like a detective examining evidence. There she was, a beautiful black woman with kind eyes and paint-stained hands, smiling in every shot. In their wedding photo, holding Amara as a newborn, standing in front of one of her paintings. But Marcus felt nothing. No recognition, no spark of memory. She was a stranger in his own history. He closed the album and set it aside, his chest heavy. He'd thought giving up his memory would be clean. A simple trade, a surgical removal. But it wasn't. It was an amputation, and he was still bleeding. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant. Board meeting in an hour. Are you still planning to attend? Marcus looked at the message, then at the photo album, then out the window at the city that never stopped moving. He could stay here, drowning in what he'd lost. Or he could move forward, the way Celeste, whoever she was, would have wanted. He typed back, "I'll be there." Then he stood, straightened his tie, and walked out of the study. He was a CEO, a father, a survivor. And he would keep going, even if he couldn't remember why. The weeks that followed were strange. Marcus threw himself into work with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. Whitmore Tech was launching a new AI platform, and he poured every ounce of his energy into the project, working 16-hour days, attending endless meetings, making decisions with the same ruthless efficiency that had built his empire. His colleagues noticed the change. He was sharper, colder, more detached. In board meetings, he dismantled arguments with surgical precision, cutting through bullshit and sentiment like a knife through butter. He fired 2 VPs for underperformance, restructured 3 departments, and increased quarterly profits by 18%. "He's back," one of the board members said during a closed-door meeting. The old Marcus, the killer. But Marcus didn't feel like himself. He felt like a ghost piloting a body, going through the motions of a life he couldn't quite remember choosing. At home, things were different. Amara flourished. With her sight fully restored, she became a different child. Curious, vibrant, alive. She devoured books, spent hours drawing. She had her mother's talent, Evelyn said, though Marcus couldn't remember what that meant, and asked a million questions about everything she saw. "Papa, why is the sky blue? Papa, what makes the subway go? Papa, why do some people have darker skin than others?" Marcus answered every question as best he could, marveling at the miracle of her. But there was a distance between them now, a space he couldn't quite bridge. She'd talk about Celeste sometimes, referencing memories he didn't share, and he'd nod along, pretending to understand. One night, she showed him a painting she'd made. "It's Mama," she said proudly, holding up the canvas. "From the picture in your study. Do you like it?" Marcus stared at the painting. A woman with dark skin and kind eyes, rendered in bold, confident strokes. Amara had captured something essential, something beyond mere likeness. There was love in every brushstroke. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, his voice thick. "I'm going to hang it in my room," Amara said, beaming, "so Mama can watch over me." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. That night, after Amara had gone to bed, he found Evelyn in the kitchen washing dishes. "She's happy," he said. Evelyn looked at him, her expression soft. "She is. But what about you, Marcus? Are you happy?" He considered the question, really thought about it. "I don't know," he admitted. "I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Like I'm playing a role I don't quite understand." Evelyn dried her hands and walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You gave up a lot," she said. "More than anyone should have to. But you did it for her, and that matters." "Does it?" Marcus asked. "I look at Amara, and I feel love. But I also feel empty. Like there's a piece of me missing that I'll never get back." Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears. "There is a piece missing," she said softly. "Celeste was that piece. She completed you. And now she's gone. Not just from the world, but from your mind. That's a loss that doesn't heal." Marcus looked away, his jaw tight. "Then how do I move forward?" he asked. You do what you've always done, Evelyn said. You survive. You adapt. You find new reasons to keep going. And if I can't? Evelyn squeezed his arm. Then you fake it until you can. A month after the ritual, Marcus received a letter. It arrived in the mail, a plain envelope with no return address, his name written in elegant script on the front. Inside was a single piece of paper, the message written in the same hand. Dear Marcus, you don't know me, but I knew Celeste. We were friends in New Orleans before she moved north. I heard about what happened, about the box, about the ritual, about the price you paid. I'm writing to tell you that she loved you more than anything in this world. She talked about you constantly, about how you made her feel safe, how you saw her for who she really was. She told me once that if anything ever happened to her, she wanted you to know that loving you was the best decision she ever made. I know you can't remember her now, but I thought you should know that she remembered you. Always. With sympathy, Simone Duclair Marcus read the letter 3 times, his hands shaking. He didn't remember Celeste. But this woman, Simone, did. And through her words, he could glimpse the shadow of what he'd lost. He folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his wallet, a small talisman against the emptiness. That night, he dreamed. In the dream, he was standing in an art gallery, surrounded by paintings he didn't recognize. And then he saw her, a woman with dark skin and paint-stained hands, standing in front of a canvas, smiling. You came, she said, and her voice was warm, familiar in a way that made his chest ache. I don't know you, Marcus said. I know, she replied, but I know you. And that's enough. She reached out, taking his hand, and for a moment, just a moment, he remembered. Her laugh, her smile, the way she used to hum while she painted, the way she'd curl up against him at night, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I miss you, he said, tears streaming down his face. Even though I don't remember, I miss you. I know, she whispered. But you saved her, Marcus. You saved our daughter, and I will always love you for that. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to his forehead, and then she was gone. Marcus woke with a start, his face wet, his heart pounding. And for the first time since the ritual, he felt at peace. 6 months after the ritual, Marcus launched the Celeste Whitmore Foundation. He didn't remember her, but he knew she'd been important. He knew she'd loved art, loved helping people, loved making the world more beautiful. So he created a foundation in her name, dedicated to funding arts education for underprivileged children and supporting research into childhood blindness. The foundation's first gala was held at the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan, a glittering affair attended by celebrities, politicians, and tech moguls. Marcus gave a speech, short, heartfelt, written with Evelyn's help, about the importance of giving children the tools to see the world, both literally and figuratively. My daughter was born blind, he said, standing at the podium, the room silent and attentive. And though she can see now, I know there are thousands of children who can't. This foundation is dedicated to changing that, to giving them hope, to giving them a future. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, a woman approached him, mid-40s, black, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile. Mr. Whitmore, she said, extending her hand. I'm Dr. Aisha Monroe. I run a clinic in Brooklyn that treats children with visual impairments. Your foundation's work could change lives. Marcus shook her hand, intrigued. Tell me more, he said. They talked for an hour, and by the end of the night, Marcus had committed to funding her clinic's expansion. It felt good, purposeful, like he was building something that mattered. But more than that, it felt like a way to honor the woman he couldn't remember. At home, Amara continued to thrive. She was enrolled in a private school now, excelling in art and literature. Her teachers raved about her talent, her creativity, her empathy. She made friends easily, laughed often, and seemed to carry no scars from the darkness that had once surrounded her. But she still saw things. Not the shadows. Those were gone. But sometimes, late at night, she'd tell Marcus about dreams she had. Dreams where Celeste visited her, told her stories, sang her songs. "She says she's happy," Amara told him one evening as he tucked her in. "She says we did the right thing." Marcus smoothed her hair, his chest tight. "Do you miss her?" he asked. Amara nodded. "Every day. But I also feel her, Papa. She's not gone. Not really." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Then hold on to that," he said. "Because love doesn't die, even when memory does." One night, Marcus was working late in his study when Evelyn knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" she asked. Of course. She entered, carrying a small box. Not the cursed one, but something simpler, made of polished wood. "I've been holding on to this," she said, setting it on his desk. "Celeste gave it to me a few weeks before she died. She told me to give it to you if anything ever happened to her." Marcus stared at the box, his pulse quickening. "What is it?" "Letters," Evelyn said. "She wrote them for you. And for Amara. I think you should read them." Marcus opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of envelopes, each labeled with a date or an occasion. For Marcus on our anniversary. For Marcus, if I'm not here. For Amara when she's 10. For Amara when she graduates. He picked up the one labeled "For Marcus, if I'm not here" and opened it carefully. The handwriting was elegant, looping, filled with personality. "My love, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you. But I need you to know something. Loving you was the greatest gift of my life. You made me brave. You made me believe I could be more than I was. And you gave me Amara, our beautiful, brilliant girl. I know the box scares you. I know you think it's dangerous. And maybe it is. But if something happens to me, promise me you'll do whatever it takes to protect her. She's our legacy, our light. Don't mourn me too long, Marcus. Live. Love again if you can. Build something beautiful in my name. I'll always be with you, even if you can't see me. Forever yours." Celeste. Marcus read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. He didn't remember writing vows to this woman. He didn't remember falling in love with her. But reading her words, feeling the depth of her love, it was like meeting her for the first time. "She was extraordinary," he whispered. Evelyn nodded, wiping her own eyes. "She was. And she loved you more than life itself." Marcus folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping this, for keeping her alive." Evelyn smiled through her tears. "That's what family does. If you're feeling this right now, you're not alone. Love leaves marks, even when memory fades. Drop a comment below. Tell me about someone you've lost, or someone you'd sacrifice everything for. And if this story is hitting you where it hurts, follow for more, because we're not done yet." Amara turned 10 on a rainy October afternoon. Marcus threw her a party at the penthouse. Nothing extravagant, just a few school friends, cake, balloons, and laughter. She wore a yellow dress and a crown made of paper flowers, and she looked so much like Celeste, or so Evelyn said, that it made Marcus's heart ache in ways he didn't fully understand. After the guests left, Amara found him in his study, where he was going through emails. "Papa?" she said, standing in the doorway. "Hey, birthday girl," Marcus said, smiling. "Did you have fun?" "Yeah," she said, "but I have a question." "Shoot." Amara hesitated, chewing her lip, a nervous habit she'd had since she was small. "Do you ever wish you could remember, Mama?" Marcus's smile faded. He set down his phone and gestured for her to come sit beside him. "Every day," he admitted. Amara climbed onto the chair, curling up against his side. "Evelyn told me what you did," she said quietly. "She said you gave up your memory of Mama to save me." Marcus's chest tightened. He'd asked Evelyn not to tell Amara, but maybe it was better that she knew. "I did," he said, "and I'd do it again." "But don't you hate it?" Amara asked, looking up at him with those miraculous eyes. "Don't you hate not knowing her?" Marcus thought about the question, really thought about it. "Sometimes," he said, "but then I look at you, and I realize that even though I can't remember her, she's still here. In you. In the way you laugh, the way you paint, the way you see the world. You're her legacy, and that's enough." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "But what if I forget her too? What if, when I grow up, I can't remember what she sounded like, or what she smelled like?" Marcus pulled her close, his own eyes stinging. "Then we'll keep her alive in other ways," he said. "Through stories, through the foundation, through the letters she left us. Memory isn't the only way to love someone, Amara. Sometimes love is just holding space for them, honoring who they were." Amara nodded against his chest, her small body shaking with silent sobs. They sat like that for a long time, father and daughter, holding on to each other in the gathering dark. A week later, Amara came to Marcus with a request. "I want to go to New Orleans," she said. "I want to see where Mama grew up. I want to meet her family." Marcus hesitated. He hadn't been back to New Orleans since Celeste's funeral. A blur of grief and strangers, and a graveside service he barely remembered. "Are you sure?" he asked. Amara nodded firmly. "I need to know her, Papa. The parts you can't tell me." So they went. Marcus, Amara, and Evelyn flew to New Orleans on a crisp November morning. They stayed in a hotel in the French Quarter, and the next day, Evelyn took them to the 9th Ward, to the house where Celeste had grown up. It was a small shotgun house painted pale green, with a porch that sagged slightly, and wind chimes that sang in the breeze. An older woman answered the door. Celeste's aunt, a woman named Marlene with silver hair and Celeste's eyes. She took one look at Amara and burst into tears. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "You look just like her." They spent the afternoon there, drinking sweet tea on the porch while Marlene told stories. She talked about Celeste as a child. Wild, creative, always covered in paint. She talked about Celeste's grandmother, the priestess, the woman who'd started all of this. She talked about love and loss, and the way grief could break you or make you stronger. Amara listened, wide-eyed, soaking it all in. And Marcus. Marcus listened too, piecing together a portrait of the woman he'd loved and lost. With every story, he felt something shift inside him. Not memory, but understanding. A sense of who Celeste had been, even if he couldn't remember her face. Before they left, Marlene took Amara's hands. "Your mama loved you more than anything," she said. "Don't you ever forget that." "I won't," Amara promised. That night, back at the hotel, Amara couldn't sleep. She knocked on Marcus's door and he let her in. They sat on the bed together, the glow of the city filtering through the curtains. "Papa," Amara said, "do you think Mama's proud of us?" Marcus looked at his daughter, this brave, beautiful girl who'd been given a miracle and carried it with grace. "I think she's proud of you," he said, "and I think she'd forgive me for forgetting, as long as I kept you safe." Amara leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm going to make her proud," she said. "I'm going to be an artist, like her. I'm going to make beautiful things." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "You already do," he said. 5 years later, Marcus Whitmore stood on the roof of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the sun set over the city. He was 45 now, graying at the temples, lines etched into his face from years of work and worry and love. Whitmore Tech was more successful than ever. The Celeste Whitmore Foundation had funded programs in 30 states, and his daughter, his brilliant, talented daughter, was thriving, Amara was 15 now, a sophomore in high school, and already making waves in the art world. Her paintings had been featured in galleries across New York, raw and emotional pieces that spoke to loss and hope and the resilience of the human spirit. She'd inherited her mother's talent, her mother's heart. And Marcus had learned to live with the hole in his memory. It never fully healed. There were still nights when he'd wake up feeling a profound sense of loss, a grief for a woman he couldn't remember. But he'd learned to carry it, to let it shape him without breaking him. He thought about Mama Laveau sometimes, wondered if she'd known how hard this would be. He thought about the Loa, about the price he'd paid, about whether it had been worth it. And every time, he looked at Amara and knew the answer. Yes. The door to the roof opened, and Evelyn stepped out, older now but still strong, still steady. "You okay?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Just thinking." "About?" "Everything. Nothing." He smiled. "Celeste." Evelyn looked at him in surprise. "You're thinking about her?" "I can't remember her," Marcus said, "but I can feel her. In Amara. In the foundation. In the life we built. She's everywhere, even if I can't see her." Evelyn's eyes glistened. "She'd be so proud of you," she said softly. Marcus nodded, his throat tight. They stood in silence for a while, watching the city lights blink on one by one, a constellation of human life and struggle and hope. "Do you regret it?" Evelyn asked. "Giving up your memory?" Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But regret doesn't change anything. And I saved her, Evelyn. I saved Amara. That's all that matters." Evelyn reached out, squeezing his hand. "You're a good man, Marcus Whitmore." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. "I'm trying to be." That night, Amara came home from an art show, buzzing with excitement. "Papa, Papa," she called, bursting into the living room where Marcus was reading. "I sold 3 paintings, and a gallery owner wants to feature me in a group show next month." Marcus set down his book, grinning. "That's incredible, baby. I'm so proud of you." Amara threw her arms around him, and he held her tight, marveling at the young woman she was becoming. "I've been working on something," she said, pulling back. "A new piece. I want to show you." She led him to her studio, a converted bedroom filled with canvases and paint and light. In the center of the room was a large painting, covered with a sheet. "I've been working on it for months," Amara said. It's about us, about our family, about Mama." She pulled off the sheet. Marcus's breath caught. The painting was stunning. A triptych showing 3 figures. On the left was a woman with dark skin and paint-stained hands, her face turned toward the sky, her expression peaceful. In the center was a man holding a little girl, both of them painted in shadows and light, their faces full of love and determination. On the right was the girl again, older now, standing alone but strong, her eyes wide open, staring out at the viewer. "It's called The Price of Sight," Amara said softly. "It's about what we gave up, and what we gained." Marcus couldn't speak. He stared at the painting, at the woman who was his wife, a wife he didn't remember but could feel in every brush stroke. "It's beautiful," he finally whispered. Amara smiled, tears in her eyes. "She's always with us, Papa, even when we can't see her." Marcus pulled her into a hug, and they stood there in the studio, surrounded by art and memory and love. "If you've stayed with me this far, you know this isn't just a story about magic or miracles. It's about the prices we pay for love, the things we sacrifice to protect the people who matter most, and the way we carry those we've lost, even when we can't remember them. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you sacrifice? What price would you pay? And if this story moved you, hit that follow button. Because stories like this, Stories about Black excellence, about resilience, about the power of love. These are the stories we need to keep telling. These are the stories that change the world. Years later, when Marcus was old and gray, sitting in a gallery watching his daughter's retrospective exhibition, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned, expecting Evelyn or a friend. But there was no one there. Just a warmth, a presence, and the faint smell of paint and jasmine. He smiled, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty air, "for everything." And somewhere, in the space between memory and love, between loss and grace, Celeste Whitmore smiled back.